Racist bikers put hands on my wife. Didn't know I was a Navy SEAL.so. Something happened recently that no husband should ever have to see. A fake, racist HOA sent a crew of biker thugs to my property. Not to talk, not to deliver a warning, but to scare my wife. I walked out of my barn and saw one of them, a man in a helmet with his hands around my wife's throat. The leader, a guy with a gray beard and sunglasses, was just watching, smiling. They thought they were predators. They thought they were the most dangerous thing on my land. They found out, in about 3 minutes, that they were very, very wrong. Let me start from the very beginning. Before we dive in, comment with what state or country you're watching from. Let's see how far this story travels. I've dealt with cartels in South America and warlords in the Hindu Kush. I've been in situations that aren't on any map. But nothing gets my blood boiling like someone putting their hands on my family. My name is Marcus Thorne, Senior Chief, United States Navy SEALs. My wife, Lena, and I have been married for 12 years. She's a civil rights attorney. She's the brains, the heart, and the absolute spine of our family. I'm just the muscle. For a decade, my home was a C-130 or a patch of dirt in a war zone. But we were done with that. We were finally done. We'd saved every penny of my combat pay, every bonus from her law firm, and we bought our forever. We bought a sanctuary. 50 acres of rolling hills in central Texas, a 100-year-old farmhouse, and a big, beautiful, dilapidated red barn. It was isolated. It was quiet. It was ours. We knew we were the only black family for 20 miles. We knew that. We just didn't care. We were there to be left alone. We were there to finally breathe. We were wrong. The letters started 3 months ago, right after we closed. Brookfield Estates HOA. The letterhead was glossy, the logo an aggressive, generic eagle. It was a joke. We weren't in Brookfield Estates. We were on a rural route, surrounded by cattle ranches. But the letters kept coming. Structural noncompliance. It said, referring to our 100-year-old barn. Landscape uniformity violations. It claimed, referring to our farm. We checked the county records. There was no legitimate HOA with jurisdiction over our property. This was a paper tiger. This wasn't just a scam, it was harassment. It was systemic racism with a letterhead. They saw a black family, a thorn, on valuable land and assumed we were an easy target. They assumed they could scare us into selling. Lena, being a lawyer, handled it. She didn't just get mad, she got organized. She sent them a cease and desist. She cited Texas Property Code, Title 11, Section 209. She informed them that no HOA has jurisdiction without a signed, filed covenant, which did not exist. She informed them that their continued contact constituted harassment under Texas Penal Code Section 4207. She told them that if one more notice arrived, she would file for a restraining order and sue their shell corporation into oblivion. She was brilliant. She was fierce. And she had just, metaphorically, kicked a hornet's nest. We thought that was the end of it. We thought the law would protect us. We were wrong. It just escalated them. They didn't send another letter. They sent muscle. I was on my last 30-day leave, my terminal leave before I retired for good. I was in the barn, finally fixing the sagging door, the smell of old wood and motor oil in the air. It was a perfect, quiet Tuesday. Lena was bringing me a lemonade. That's when I heard it. Not a car. Not a truck. The low, guttural, earth-shaking rumble of multiple Harley-Davidsons. It wasn't just one or two. It was a pack. I looked out the barn window, and my blood went cold. 5 of them. They didn't stop at our gate. They had rolled right over the chain, snapping it, and parked in a tactical semicircle in our yard, blocking the path from the house to the barn. They were big men, wearing leather vests or cuts, with an insignia I didn't recognize. But one of them, the leader, the man from the picture, had a patch sewn onto his vest right next to his biker club patch. It was the Brookfield Security Eagle. This was the enforcement team. Lena had been on the porch. She saw them. She didn't run. My wife doesn't run. This is private property, I heard her say, her voice shaking but firm. You need to leave. Now. The leader, the one with the gray beard and sunglasses, Sarge, got off his bike. He took his time. He was the one in the center of the photo. He walked over, looked at our house, at the barn, and then at my wife, and he smiled. A cold, dead, reptilian smile. "We are the authority here, sweetheart," he said, his voice a low growl. "We're from the HOA. You and your husband have been ignoring our notices. This is the final warning. The boss wants this property. He's tired of you people bringing down the property values." "You are trespassing," Lena said, her hand gripping the porch rail. "I've already sent your shell company a cease and desist. You are in violation of the law. Your little law school letters don't mean much out here, darling," Sarge sneered. "We're the law out here. And this is a notice of seizure. We're here to inspect the property for violations." "Get off my land," Lena said, her voice dropping. "Or what?" Another one, the one in the helmet, laughed. "You're gonna call the cops?" "We are the cops." He got off his bike and started walking toward the porch, toward my wife. "You talk too much, B*TCH. That's when I started moving. I didn't run. I walked, fast and silent, from the shadow of the barn, my hands empty, my face calm. "Hey," the man in the helmet yelled, seeing me. "Look at this. The man of the house." Sarge saw me. He smiled. He had his men. He had my wife. He thought he had all the leverage. Well, here he is. "You see, this is what happens when you don't pay your dues. Now we're going to collect." "Lena," I said, my voice flat, cutting through his. "Go in the house. Lock the door." "She ain't going nowhere," the man in the helmet said. He lunged, fast, and grabbed her. He was clumsy, but he was big. He grabbed her by the arms, by her jacket. And when she struggled, he put his hands on her throat. And that is the moment in the picture. Him, choking my wife. Her, terrified. Sarge, watching. The other three, fanning out. And me. I stopped. Time stopped. The world went silent. The smell of cut grass and gasoline. The sound of Lena's sharp, choked gasp. The high, thin scream of a hawk overhead. And in my head, the operator took over. Threat assessment. 5 targets. 1 primary, helmet, is holding the hostage, Lena. 1 leader, Sarge, is the shot caller. 3 others are flank. All are armed, likely with knives, maybe 1 or 2 with pistols. Helmet is the priority. I need to break his hold, create separation for Lena. I need a weapon. "No, I am the weapon. Let her go," I said. My voice wasn't angry. It wasn't scared. It was cold. It was the voice I use when things are at their absolute worst. This unnerved them. "I don't think I will," Sarge taunted, his hand now on the pistol on his hip. "Maybe you should show us some respect. Get on your knees." I said, "Okay." I pretended to comply. I took 1 step, bent my knees. And then I moved. If you're enjoying this story of justice so far, like and subscribe, because the takedown is only going to get better. The air shifted the second that biker leaned closer to Lena. My body moved before my brain caught up. Years of training flashing back like it was yesterday. Minute 1, the hostage. I wasn't closing the distance. I was erasing it. I closed the 20 feet to helmet in 5 seconds. He was still processing. His head was turned, still looking at Sarge, gloating. He never saw me. I didn't hit him. I hit his arms. A series of precise, brutal, CQC, close quarters combat strikes to the brachial plexus nerve cluster on both sides of his collarbone. His arms went instantly, neurologically dead. His grip on Lena's throat vanished. He couldn't even make a fist. He just opened. I shoved his now useless body into Sarge, using him as a human shield, and in the same fluid motion, I grabbed Lena by the waist and threw her behind me toward the porch. "Go in the house, Lena. Call 911. Tell them code 1. Code 1 was our old code. It meant, I am handling the threat, but I need cleanup. Send everyone." She didn't hesitate. She ran. Minute 2, the flank. The other 3 were fumbling, surprised. They're bikers. They're brawlers. They're not operators. They're slow. 1, a big guy with a long beard, pulled a knife. A big, stupid, 7-inch Bowie knife. Big mistake. I was already moving. I picked up a heavy, cast-iron tractor hitch pin from the ground by my truck. He lunged, a wide, sloppy, downward stab. I parried his knife hand, not with my arm, but with the steel pin. The crack of his radius breaking was louder than the clang of the steel. He screamed, a high-pitched, pig squeal, and dropped, clutching his arm. The second one tried to grab me from behind. A classic bar fight move. I pivoted, didn't even look at him, and drove my elbow backward, not into his chest, but into his solar plexus. All my weight, all my momentum. Huff. He collapsed like a string puppet, all the air in the world gone from his lungs. The third one, the last one, just stopped. He'd seen his two friends, one with a dangling, broken wrist, one who couldn't breathe, go down in less than 5 seconds. He just put his hands up. I'm good, man. I'm good. Minute 3, the leader. Now, it was just me and Sarge. He had shoved the whimpering helmet off him. He was furious. His face was purple. His hand was on his pistol. He was trying to clear the leather. He was not fast enough. I wasn't closing the distance. I'm not a brawler. I'm a SEAL. I drew my own concealed carry Glock 19, which I had in the small of my back. I didn't aim at him. I aimed at the ground, 3 inches from his left boot, and fired. Crack. The gravel and dirt exploded, stinging his leg. Sarge froze. His hand was still on his gun. Don't, I said, my voice still calm, still cold. My weapon was at a low ready, not pointed at him. Not yet. My next shot won't be in the dirt. You came to my house. You put your hands on my wife. You threatened my family. You are trespassing. You are committing aggravated assault. And you are done. The guy with the broken wrist was sobbing, actual tears. The guy on the ground was still gasping, trying to get air. The one standing had his hands up. Helmet was clutching his dead arms, his face white with shock. And Sarge, he was looking at the hole in the ground, then at my eyes. And he finally understood. The predator was gone. He was just a fat, scared man in a costume. Okay. Jesus. Stop. Just stop. He was begging, his hands coming up, shaking. We'll go. We're gone. We're sorry. We'll go. Sorry, I said, walking toward him, my weapon now holstered, because he was no longer a threat. He was just cargo. You're not sorry. You're just unlucky. Get on the ground. All of you. Face down. Hands on your heads. Now. They all dropped. They were blubbering. The tough guy act was gone. The sirens were wailing in the distance. Lena had made the call. Sheriff Dan Miller arrived, not with 1 car, but 3. He saw the scene. Me, standing, drinking the lemonade Lena had finally brought out. 5 bikers, face down in the dirt, one of them moaning about his wrist, another one still gasping. Jake, Dan said, sighing as he got out of his car. You have one hell of a welcome home party. This wasn't a party, Dan, I said. This was a Brookfield Estates HOA enforcement action. This is the crew you've been worried about. Dan's entire demeanor changed. He walked over and cuffed Sarge personally. Mr. Harrison, I presume? The developer's head of security? We've been building a case on your boss for months. We just needed something to stick. You just gave us aggravated assault, conspiracy, extortion, and, since you did it on behalf of a corporation, probably a RICO charge. As they were being cuffed, Helmet, the one who grabbed my wife, was screaming, his voice high and panicked. It wasn't my idea. He paid us. He paid us to scare them, to make the new problem go away. The lawyer, he said the lawyer would sue us. I stopped. I looked at Lena. She looked at me. This wasn't just a random, racist land grab. The developer, this Mr. Harrison, knew my wife was a lawyer. He knew she was the one sending the cease and desist. He didn't just send thugs to scare an old woman. He sent them to assault a lawyer to stop her from building the legal case against him. I watched them get hauled away, a line of pathetic, broken bullies. I walked back to the porch. Lena was standing there, shaking, but her eyes were on fire. You're bleeding, she said, pointing to my knuckles, which were raw from the tractor pin. It's not my blood, I said. They weren't just after the land, Lena. They were after you. The developer knows who you are. This isn't over. She took a sip of her lemonade. Good, she said. He just made a fatal mistake. He sent you evidence. And now, I'm going to bury him. Subscribe for part 2. Because this developer is about to find out what happens when he goes to war with a SEAL. And his lawyer,